Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1231. Feverish Battle. Only this real-life god of fortune had sufficient ability to amass so much logistical items at such terrifying speed. If everyone was left to their own methods, it would certainly result in chaos and end up hampering their progress. Tang Yuan did not even bother acting humble. At this moment, acting conservatively would only end up dragging things down, slowing everyone down. This granddaddy simply does things like this. Compared to this granddaddy, you all are not even considered casual players. Tang Yuan carried out his work expressionlessly. The same hands that beckoned gold and silver with the force of an ocean also sent out gold and silver with the force of a raging ocean. Many years later, whenever anyone did an account of the amount of money that Tang Yuan had spent in this period, those self-proclaimed god of fortunes would all collapse mentally in defeat. The amount of money that Tang Yuan spent in these few days was equivalent to the GDP of 2 superpower nations of 10 years. The gold and silver spent was so great that it could no longer be counted in Liang. The entire continent seemed to be in a state of chaos. All the large families, regardless of whether they had any conflict or hatred with each other before, put down their fights and joined hands to unite against the common enemy. It didn't matter if their conflict had happened from having their wives snatched or if their sons had been killed by the other party. All the glory, greed, and shame had suddenly become unimportant in the face of this apocalyptic crisis. The fragmented continent had suddenly become a united whole in this moment. All their strength was now focused in the same direction. The hearts of millions united as one, their wills joined together like a fortress. Those who were righteous, those who were despicable, those who were evil, those who were hateful, as long as they were people born from this land, everyone worked for the same purpose. Repel the outsiders. It was as what Jun Moxie had said. The only way for the world to have peace was if everyone was united under fear and pressure. Only in that kind of situation would the continent truly become strong. After this incident, as long as nothing else happened, the continent would likely continue this state of vigilance and unity. Even Guan Qinghan's maiden family, the Han family, also sent out all the forces of their entire family for this battle. The continent was in turmoil, and factions large and small, together with various rogue cultivators, moved towards a single direction together like a powerful wave. At this moment, the pillar of heaven's mountains had become the heart of the continent. It was a major gathering point. Like an abnormally large magnet, it pulled people to charge towards it regardless of all costs, with the greatest speed. Even if the result of rushing there with so much urgency was just to throw away their lives, they would not turn back. Right now, the area in front of the pillar of heaven's mountains had already been transformed into a sea of blood. The Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer army had already rotated to defend the area 3 times. Tian Fa's warriors had also rotated 3 times. The same went for the elite forces of the 3 Holy Lands. The continent's allied army, which numbered tens of thousands, was nearly all made up of injured men. Yet, the attacks of the outsiders still poured in like a continuous flood. Whether the blistering sun hung high in the sky or if it was a frigid night without a moon, it did not relent. Countless crazed men roared and cried as they swung their swords and sabers wildly, stepping over the mounds of dead bodies as they threw themselves at their enemies, hacking with broken blades, punching and kicking with their limbs, even using their teeth to bite their enemies and their bodies as battering rams. Every step taken would cause blood to spurt in all directions from under their feet. The blood mist in the air had already congealed into dense clouds. With every breath, Everyone's throat would be filled with the dampness of blood. The battlefield resembled a scene of utter madness. Heads flew into the sky continuously, landing and disappearing under the sea of blood. The hand that was still swinging a blade fiercely 1 second ago could be turned into minced meat in the next second. The mouth that was still roaring madly could drown in a mess of blood and flesh under someone else's foot in the next moment. This insane battlefield that threatened to spiral out of control at any moment seemed as if it would never end. Loud booming sounds of self-detonations rang out continuously everywhere, like fireworks in the backdrop of this hellish battlefield. Unlike the fireworks on New Year's Day, the fireworks here did not celebrate the heralding of a new year. It signaled the death of a powerful expert, and tens of that expert's enemies stepping onto the path of the Yellow Springs. Nearly every second, the sounds of explosions could be heard. Even those experts with superior cultivation would not have had the time to display much of their abilities before being forced to take this final and most extreme path. Many people could only use their lives as a one-time bomb, without managing to do anything else. In a cruel battlefield like this, there were even many unfortunate bastards who did not even have the time to self-detonate before they were hacked into thousands of tiny pieces, sinking into the ocean of blood and flesh. In such a chaotic situation, even the TNFA warriors and the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer army with their powerful battle ability were unable to push through the enemy's ranks. Every time they succeeded in gaining any ground, they would be blasted back by the frenzied explosions of their enemies. Most of the time, they could only defend passively. No matter what kind of army it was, or how elite their forces were, they could only hang on at the edge of the front lines for a short time, before casualties appeared. If they were not rotated out within half an hour, the entire troop would face the danger of being completely annihilated. Whether it was TNFA, or the evil Monarch Manor's forces, or even the indomitable Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer army, it was the same. The battle was sudden, but the intensity of the battle had far surpassed any of their imaginations. Even if tens of thousands of people put their brains together and tens of thousands talented artists put their pens together, they would not be able to depict a fraction of the intensity of this battle. Mei Xuan stood high above the sky, dressed in flowing white robes. Using voice transmissions, she constantly sent out orders to move the troops. In the last 3 days and nights, she had not moved from her spot at all. Her mouth had also not stopped for even 1 second as she gave out orders repeatedly. Mei Xuan's mind was constantly whirling at high speed to keep up with the countless changes of the battlefield. Even with her Saint Monarch cultivation and mental strength, her mouth had begun to blister, and her eyes were already bloodshot. She didn't dare to relax for even half a second. In the time it took for her to blink once, tens of powerful warriors might have lost their lives because they didn't manage to adjust their position in time. If Mei Xuan was working so hard, what about Jun Moxie? Young Master Jun was currently inside the Hongjun Pagoda. One must not think that he was so heartless as to hide away and relax while everyone was working hard. Truthfully, the amount of effort he was putting in was no less than Mei Xuan and was even several times more. Before this battle, Jun Moxie had prepared enormous amounts of iron in the Hongjun Pagoda. At this time, all this iron was being put to use. Using the power of gold, he continuously refined the iron as if he didn't care about his life anymore. The number of high-grade weapons he'd made had already formed into a long metallic river. Weapons continuously appeared beside him and then disappeared. No matter how sturdy the weapons were, they would all turn into scrap metal after an hour of frenzied hacking on this battlefield. This was the same even for the weapons refined with the power of gold. The number of hits that each weapon took every second was already at the extreme limits that it could endure in normal training sessions. Even a casual swing of the blade would cause a stream of clanging sounds, because at least 5, 6 enemy weapons would be in its path. Even warriors with Saint Emperor cultivation would have the corners of their hands ruptured even if they held their weapons with both hands. On the other side, the number 1 expert of the outsiders, Chuangshang Beidao, continuously screamed in a crazed manner as stared at the defending forces like a hungry wolf. Go! Go! Everyone, even if you die, you will die for me over there. Go and die on their side. At this point, he no longer used the words charge. He simply told them to die. It was an order like this. Yes, I am ordering you to go and die. Your only mission is to die on this battlefield. To die on the side of the Xian continent. There's no need to worry about whether you can break through their defense. Your mission is to use your greatest ability. And after that, you may die there. There's no need to retain any hopes of survival. But it was this kind of order that caused the outsiders to abandon any remaining hesitation. Without even blinking, they faithfully charged forward, howling madly and barging with all their might to die. Just like a violent wave, they simply threw their bodies forward, onto their enemies' blades, and died. This was the fastest method, a troop of 1,000 soldiers, rushing to the front lines with their bodies. And when the second troop reached, the first troop would have already been grinded into flesh pulp. Not a single body was intact. In these 3 days and nights, even by the most conservative estimate, at least 300,000 outsiders warriors had already died. By this time, the ground was completely paved with bodies without anyone able to touch the ground. The wide expanse of land had already been completely buried by bodies. The inner bestial instincts in every single person's heart was completely unleashed on this kind of feverish battlefield. Even the most timid and cowardly person, if he was able to return alive from this battlefield, he would turn into a completely fearless man in the future. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1232. Fearless Death Troop. Even 100 of those experienced experts of the pugilistic world who'd seen their fill of death combined together, they would not have seen as many dead bodies in their lives as compared to the people that died in just 1 hour on this battlefield. Towards the end, everyone had already become completely numb. Apart from killing and being killed, they basically did not have any other thoughts. Everybody's hearts had begun to grow harder and harder. At the start, when they saw their comrades being killed or self-detonating, they would be filled with endless grief and tears. But now, even if their dearest brother was hacked into pieces in front of their eyes, they would be completely unmoved. This was an extremely ordinary thing. Perhaps, in the next instant, it would be my turn. The one that would be hacked into minced meat would be me. Maybe, if I didn't use an extreme method like self-detonation, there might not even be anything left of me. Regardless of the result, we would still be reunited later on. Was there a need to be sad over a separation that only lasted for the blink of an eye? All those experts who had been confident of their personal strength would quickly come to a realization as soon as they entered this battlefield. In this kind of chaotic battle, personal heroism was nothing but a joke. An extremely lame joke. Even a powerful sage-level expert would be exhausted to death in this environment. Heaven Destroyer Team. Retreat. Tiger King. Bring the 3rd platoon of the Tiger Tribe and plug the gap. Mei Shuian's hoarse voice rang out again. Solitary Eagle swung out his sword forcefully and without even confirming if that strike had killed anyone, he roared, "Brothers! One more swing, and we pull back." As his voice rang out, Over 100 heavily chipped swords swung downwards at the same time. The outsiders' forces in front of them instantly fell, and the blades in the Heaven Destroyer soldiers' hands also completely fell apart with this forceful swing. Without even turning their heads, the Heaven Destroyer team retreated. They'd only taken 3 steps back when Earthcracker charged up beside them. The Tiger Tribe's roar rang out like thunder, and they instantly took over the spot that they'd left. But in just that short breath of time, the outsiders had already pushed forward another 2 steps. The defensive line was once again pushed back. Bear Tribe, 1st Platoon, fall back. Spirit Devourer Troop, take over. Mei Shuyan's voice sounded as if she would spit out blood at any moment. Roaring fiercely, Big Bear swung his gigantic sword heavily. At the same time, the other Bear Tribe warriors roared as well and took 3 steps back. Behind them, a mass of gleaming blades surged up to cover them. Thong Juanyan's Spirit Devourer Roop had already plugged in with a speed akin to lightning, nailing down the Bear Tribe's location. The outsiders' forces completely disregarded all price and sacrifices, pushing forward like a relentless tide, wave after wave. The Spirit Devourer troops were drenched in blood and battered, but they did not retreat even a single step. They were like the boulders on the shore, not budging no matter how tall the waves. At this time, the weapons around Jun Moxie formed into a small mountain. All the metal in the Hongjun Pagoda had been completely refined without anything remaining. Without resting, Jun Moxie appeared beside Mei Shuyan. With a wave of his hand, huge amounts of spiritual qi condensed water poured over her body. At the same time, another stream of spiritual qi water flowed into her mouth. Mei Shuyan had been constantly watching the battlefield and commanding. The 350,000 soldiers had been split into 3 waves and 35 smaller platoons by her. She had to constantly rotate these troops, and in the last 3 days, she had not even had the time to drink a sip of water. From this, it was easy to imagine just how intense the battle was. Truthfully, this was the only method to relieve her exhaustion. But in just that instant of interruption, 10 Crane Tribe warriors were drowned by the masses of the outsiders' army after not being able to react in time. Following that, 10 loud explosions rang out, clearing a patch on the area. But in the blink of an eye, that empty space was once again filled up by the outsiders' army. Crane Tribe, pull back. Wolves Tribe 5th Pack, cover the gap. Mei Shuyan hurriedly commanded. On this battlefield, only 4 people had not fought yet. Mei Shuyan, Jun Moxie, Gu Han, and the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Mei Shuyan needed to control the entire battlefield, so even if there was a chance to fight, it would never come to her. As for the other 3, they had not moved yet, because the outsiders' supremacy enduring heavens had not moved yet either. Even the frenzy blade enduring earths had not made much of an appearance. Apart from the commanders of the various troops, the other outsiders' experts basically hadn't moved at all. Naturally, there were some grand plot hidden in this. Perhaps, when the Xian continent's army was thoroughly exhausted, they would finally make their entrance. For this reason, the 3 of them did not dare to make any rash moves. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuyan only exchanged a glance and did not say a single word before they parted again. Jun Moxie rose into the air and took over the 9 Nether 14th Young Master's position. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master looked once at him, and a faint smile appeared in his eyes. Looking away, Jun Moxie sent out his spiritual sense, instantly covering the entire area, enveloping the space of several hundred li. Following that, he quickly located Chuangshang Beidao, seeing that fellow hollering out commands in a frenzied manner. Beside him, numerous outsiders generals charged out continuously. Behind him, there was still a black mass of troops that hadn't moved at all. They were like the terrifying demons hiding in the dark, awaiting the time when they would be unleashed upon the world to feast. That army of thousands should be the peak experts of the outsiders. Jun Moxie sucked in a breath of air and said, "Indeed. But that is not just a few thousands, it's an elite force of 23,500. The 9 Nether 14th young master said with a slight shrug. And the bunch that is standing behind that fellow is just one portion of the real numbers. It's not even a third of the real thing. As for the other 2/3, they are on the left and right flanks of the battlefield, awaiting orders." Jun Moxie carefully sensed for a moment, and as expected, it was exactly like what he'd said. But what caused young Master Jun to be truly confused was that with the 9 Nether 14th young master's aloof personality, he'd actually had such a good grasp on the opponent enemy's strength. "How's the overall strength of those people?" Jun Moxie asked modestly. "Very strong." A rare look of solemnity appeared in the 9 Nether 14th young master's eyes. "They don't have many Saint Monarchs. Only about 15 people in total, with at least 10 at only the first level of Saint Monarch. However, they have many more Saint Venerable experts, which can be counted in hundreds. As for the remaining, they're all Saint Emperors. Furthermore, they're all at least second-level Saint Emperor and above. Clearly, the basic conditions of being able to join this elite troop is a cultivation level of second-level Saint Emperor." "What?" Jun Moxie widened his eyes with shock. "You wouldn't have seen wrongly, right? How can there be so many peak experts on the side of the outsiders? If they truly had such terrifying strength, why would they bother with the war for seizing the heavens? They could have flattened the 3 Holy Lands long ago. There's definitely no way that my detection will be wrong. Although these 23,500 elite soldiers are all at least second-level Saint Emperors, at least half of them have quite unstable Xian Qi. These people are unlikely to be able to advance any further. Also, most of their Xian Qi is extremely chaotic. In a straight fight, a normal second-level Saint Emperor on our side would be able to kill at least 6 or 7 of these unstable fake experts." The 9 Nether 14th young master commented lightly. "My guess is that those people are just cannon fodder, albeit the strongest possible cannon fodder. Their cultivation has obviously been raised through some kind of strange method that disregards the body's condition. Among these cannon fodder, there are over 40 whose strength has already been raised to Saint Venerable. The rest are basically all second and third level Saint Emperors." The 9 Nether 14th young master glanced at Jun Moxie and continued. "There are 11,900 of these cannon fodders. Their eyes do not hold any hope at all, and quite obviously, to die here is their final and greatest wish. So, their main attacking plan should be a large-scale self-detonation. 11,900 Saint Emperor cannon fodders." Jun Moxie gasped aloud and nearly fell out of the sky. If so many experts self-detonated together, then... Cold sweat appeared all over Jun Moxie's head. Whether those people's cultivations were stable or not, they were still second-level Saint Emperors. The moment they self-detonated, the effects would be the same as if a normal second-level Saint Emperor self-detonated. Such a shocking amount of energy was enough to bury the entire allied army. From the looks of it, these outsiders' creatures had really all turned crazy. To actually be willing to sacrifice so heavily. If it was you against that group, what results would you say you can achieve? Jun Moxie asked. "Before I retreat from exhausting my energy, I can kill 3,000. The 9 Nether 14th young master looked at him and said after some thought. Of course. That is under the condition that I can use divine tune to support me. In addition, they must maintain the same enthusiasm to battle like right now. If they had the intentions to run and reserve their strength, I might not be able to kill even half of that amount. Jun Moxie massaged his temples with pain as he pondered about his next move. If they really all charged forward, aiming for a battle strategy of mutual destruction, from your opinion, how should we deal with it? Jun Moxie asked seriously. The Nether 14th young master pondered quietly for a while and finally shook his head. There's only one method: retreat. That is the only way to retain your forces. What if we can't retreat? Jun Moxie's eyes blazed stubbornly. Retreat was absolutely not an option. If you insist, there is still one more method which can cause them great amounts of damage. The Nether 14th young master looked blandly at Jun Moxie and said, however, it requires the both of us to fully work together. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1233. Do you dare? How do we cooperate? Do tell. Jun Moxie had thought of several strategies, but he felt that not a single one of them was useful. Even if it was effective, it couldn't annihilate an entire army of over 20,000 men in one go. The Nether 14th young master replied with a meaningful look in his eyes. The basis of this method lies on that black flame of yours. That's not suitable. Although it can burn anything and is unstoppable, it is too slow in its movement. Even if it's from a low height, by the time it lands, these outsiders would have already moved miles away from their original position already. Jun Moxie showed his disapproval of the Nether 14th young master's plan. How could young Master Jun not think of using the flame of primal chaos to wipe out all the enemies like how he dealt with Xia Changtian and the rest? Making a huge pit and freezing them with the essence of ice before annihilating them with the flame of primal chaos. But reality didn't allow this. First, his power of earth and flame of primal chaos were not able to cover such an enormous area. Even with the aid of the Hongjun Pagoda, it was not possible. Second, if he used the power of the Hongjun Pagoda again, then he wouldn't be able to support the battle for a day at minimum. If he didn't help in the battle for an entire day, at a crucial time like this, as the soul of the entire army, how could he? Jun Moxie didn't even dare to imagine what sort of irreversible consequence that would cause. Third, even with the aid of the Hongjun Pagoda, it had no effect on the speed of the flame of primal chaos. If he became completely immobile because he had overexerted, without dealing much damage to the enemy, then that'd really be stupid. You've misunderstood what I meant. What I meant was for you to scatter those flames with all your might. Then, I'll use divine tune to play a song of 1,000-mile soul-chasing sword, using my spirit energy to increase the speed of those flames of yours, making them descend rapidly when they're all gathered. This way, it will definitely deal significant damage to the outsiders. If we're lucky, we may be able to annihilate 90% of them. The Nether 14th young master continued indifferently. Of course, that's on the condition that you allow my power of the 9 Nethers to obtain the acknowledgement of that flame temporarily. He narrowed his eyes. I can tell that that flame has its own soul. Without its acknowledgement, even I cannot do anything about it. Jun Moxie laughed bitterly internally. You sure are spot on. Your method is truly the most plausible one we have currently. Jun Moxie decisively made the proposal. Later, you shall channel that unique 9 Nethers essence chi into my body, and allow me to take control to obtain the flame's approval. There really cannot be any more delays. It'll be too late to do this when our forces are exhausted, and the enemy attacks at full force. But the Nine Nether 14th young master was rudely shocked by young Master Jun's proposal. What sort of person was this evil monarch? Did he not have any sense of wariness? It was a simple matter to channel that Nine Nether's essence chi into Jun Moxie's body. But if Jun Moxie truly allowed the Nine Nether's essence chi to enter his body without any resistance, that was the equivalent of Jun Moxie putting his life entirely into the hands of the Nine Nether 14th young master, allowing him to do as he pleased, putting himself completely at his mercy. During that time, it would be effortless for the Nine Nether's 14 young master to kill Jun Moxie, no matter what sort of divine abilities this evil monarch had. He won't be able to escape this fate. But after the Nine Nether's essence chi was channeled into young Master Jun's body, this external skill could only be completely controlled by Jun Moxie when all resistance was given up. This would mean that the Nine Nether 14th young master would put down all his defenses and entrust his life, skills, and cultivation entirely into the hands of Jun Moxie. The Nine Nether 14th young master will be doomed with a single thought by Jun Moxie. It may seem like a simple circulation of chi, but it actually concerned the life and death of two strong experts of this world. In this entire process, the moment either party harbored any ill intent, the other one was doomed. Of course, Jun Moxie was clear of the pros and cons of this, but young Master Jun could not help it with the current situation. If he wished for the flame of primal chaos to accept the drive of an external energy, this process was inevitable. The flame of primal chaos was not as human-like as the blood of yellow flame. It could not think or speak, but it had a soul and discernibility of its own. Accepting the control of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was the nature of this flame. Or rather, its instinct. But allowing it to be controlled by an external force will definitely cause a severe backlash from it. This was also a form of its instinct. It's not allowed, even if it's a temporary control that is removed after it is over. Any small carelessness will cause all of the Nine Nether's essence chi of the Nine Nether 14th young master to be completely burnt. Then, it'll really be a tragedy for the Nine Nether 14th young master. Even the Nine Nether 14th young master, with the unique Nine Nether's essence chi passed down by the Nine Nether 1st young master, could not deal with the flame of primal chaos. Jun Moxie raised his head when he finished saying this, meeting gazes with the Nine Nether 14th young master, seeing the deepest internal struggles in each other's eyes. What did it mean to be strong? The strong must have absolute control. There was no negotiation for this, especially when it concerned their life and freedom. Because this was their greatest pursuit. Not a single expert would be willing to put their lives in the hands of another person at their mercy. Even if it was their own parents, siblings, or close ones. No. But right now, at this moment, this situation that concerned the entire world forced these two strongest experts to this state. And the most ironic thing was that these two who were forced into this state were two who had absolutely no concern for the safety of the entire world. Jun Moxie never harbored any duty to the common lives of this world and would not make sacrifices for their sake. The Nine Nether 14th young master didn't have any fond feelings of the common lives of this world. He didn't even have the world in his eyes. What has the common lives of the world got to do with me? But right now, it needed these two people to stake the safety of their lives. And it was something that they absolutely must do. If someone told young Master Jun or the Nine Nether 14th young master that they would brood and mull over this matter before this, they'd definitely snort at the remark. The common lives of the world? The safety of the continent? What has this got to do with me? Even right now, young Master Jun didn't wish to do it. But he knew that if he wasn't decisive, The outsiders would use this army to break past the defenses of the Xian continent. And there would be no other hopes for the situation. Not mentioning why Jun Moxie detested the outsiders. Even if Jun Moxie didn't hate the outsiders, he could not accept it. Because those who were fighting behind him, bathed in blood, were Jun Moxie's brothers and dear ones. The outsiders would only be able to break through by stepping on the corpses of these people. Jun Moxie didn't care about the common people and the safety of the continent, but he couldn't not care about them. He cared about them dearly. So he couldn't not do it. But did the Nether 14th young master have this sort of reason for him to do it? Both of them looked at each other dead in the eyes, unblinking. You scared? An odd grin appeared on Jun Moxie's face. Perhaps. The number one expert of the continent, the Nether 14th young master, is afraid of being wiped out with a single thought of mine. The evil monarch's name will replace the Nether 14th young masters and become the shocking legend of the Xian continent. Your life will be the cornerstone of my supreme legacy. The Nether 14th young master cackled weirdly and said, Indeed. What you said makes sense. But before what you said can happen, perhaps this young master makes the first thought. And this number one prodigy, one of the rare existences that is qualified to pose a threat to this young master, will be destroyed with a single thought of mine. Your advancement speed is truly too shocking. If you're given more time, you will be able to completely surpass me. This will not be a surprise. There may even be the day where I die in your hands. Right now, I can erase a potential great threat in the future with a single thought. Do you really think I won't do it? The Nether 14th young master said eerily, leaning forward slightly, with an aggressive action. Are you scared? Brat? Both of them continued to maintain eye contact. An icy, heartless look in their eyes. But the next moment, both of them broke out into loud laughter at the same time. The Nether 14th young master and Jun Moxie laughed heartily. Did Jun Moxie really harbor such thoughts? It could not be denied that such a thought had flashed across Jun Moxie's mind. How glorious would it be to be able to slay the Nether 14th young master effortlessly? What sort of might and prestige was that? Besides, the Nether 14th young master was basically like a sharp sword that hung above his head. Who knew when he would go berserk and come hacking down? Once he went crazy, there weren't many that would be able to escape from the Nether 14th young master alive in this world. Was the Nether 14th young master speaking honestly? Did he harbor such a thought? Similarly, it can't be denied that the Nether 14th young master was speaking truthfully. He did have such thoughts. Jun Moxie had been advancing rapidly, reaching the realm of a peak Saint Monarch in less than 2 years. Then, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to surpass the Nether 14th young master's current level. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1234. The most precious trust in the world. During that time, the Nether 14th young master's life was also in the hands of Jun Moxie. If Jun Moxie wanted to kill him, it wouldn't take much to do it. To the Nether 14th young master, only Jun Moxie could be considered the biggest threat in the entire world. Everyone else was considered insignificant. Even if it was a perverse existence like Shan Kuang, the Nether 14th young master was confident that he would be able to handle him. If Shan Kuang had not merged with the 9 illusory quicksand, and the two of them battled to death, the chances of victory remained 50-50. Only Jun Moxie was an exception. Young Master Jun's rocketing speed in his advancement put all the experts of the world on edge. With this sort of shocking speed, it wouldn't be too difficult, or long, for him to surpass the 9 Nether 14th young master. The 9 Nether 14th young master could even estimate how much longer it'd take for Jun Moxie to surpass himself. The 9 Nether 14th young master was no benevolent man. How could he not wish to eradicate such a menacing threat as soon as possible? But both of them had said it, their deepest, most truthful thoughts. Which was also the most despicable, shameless way of thinking. They said it out honestly. In that moment of silence while they locked eyes, these two people were struggling with their inner, despicable selves. To do it, or not. Fortunately, both of them emerged victorious in this battle with their most despicable selves. The moment they said it, both of them felt a great sense of relief. The moment Jun Moxie said his thoughts, he felt as though a sealed door in his heart had suddenly opened. His entire body was extremely light and airy, and his mind extremely clear. At this moment, Jun Moxie suddenly had a realization. Perhaps the next breakthrough is near. Before the battle, during the battle, or even after the battle. The 9 Nether 14th young master also had a similar experience. He distinctly felt the 9 Nether's seal in his mind loosening up. Compared to before, his mind had advanced greatly. The seal that was as indomitable as an iron fortress seemed to have turned into a thin sheet of paper. He only needed to settle his thoughts and meditate, and he would be able to break through at one go. Because they'd won against themselves, won against their inner demons. Generations of experts could practically win against everyone, but the only person they couldn't win against was themselves. The moment they won against themselves was the moment they achieved instant rehabilitation. Because they were their own greatest enemy. And at the same time, the toughest enemy to defeat. In the world, there was no other enemy that would be harder to deal with than this. This was the real mountain in their path. The moment they made it through, Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master would no longer have any obstacles in their cultivation. You can break through like this? Both of them said at the same time. Then, they met gazes again and laughed. What a great laugh. Both of them had the same thought. Then, Jun Moxie's eyes widened. Because the 9 Nether 14th young master, at this moment, removed that layer of 9 Nether's mist that concealed his face and revealed his true appearance for the first time ever. He had a tall and lanky build, black hair and a chiseled face, with a pair of narrow eyes and thin lips that gave off an emotionless and aloof feeling. And the most attractive thing was the 9 Nether 14th young master's pupils. Although it was also a pair of black pupils, one would unconsciously get lost in them. As if there was another endless universe in them. This face had also given people an odd feeling. Some would believe it if they said he was 20, or perhaps 30. Even if he was 60, no one would find it odd. For those who had never cultivated, they'd unconditionally believe that it's no surprise if someone who looks like this had lived for 10,000 years. You're not bad, brat. Because you've let me experience for the first and only time in my entire life what trust was. The 9 Nether 14th young master laughed. To think that this feeling can make one feel this comfortable and even become an opportunity to get past the inner demons. Jun Moxie laughed. Actually, you look pretty handsome. Why do you always cover yourself up? Since ancient times, beauties have short lives. Yet women of the world harbor the most feelings. The 9 Nether 14th young master said seriously. It is precisely because I look rather handsome, so I must cover it up. I have devoted my entire life to cultivation. Where do I have the time to waste on all these matters of the heart? Jun Moxie wanted to laugh, but he couldn't laugh. But it was truly uncomfortable holding it in. This wasn't a narcissistic statement. Jun Moxie was confident that he could tell what the 9 Nether 14th young master was saying was the truth. With the 9 Nether 14th young master's profound cultivation, vast knowledge, and his exceptional looks, it would not be difficult for him to obtain the hearts of any woman. Furthermore, he had the reputation of the #1 expert. There were definitely not many women who could resist such an outstanding man. Even if they knew that the 9 Nether 14th young master was known as a demon, there would still be plenty of women flocking to him. Jun Moxie couldn't help but recall from his previous life, where some naive young girls would always like to clamber to gangsters and ruffians. Because the logic of worshipping the strong was applicable everywhere. Those who were capable of doing things that most people were afraid of doing were considered strong and powerful in the eyes of most people. This was nothing surprising. Looks like the 9 Nether 14th young master has experienced such a thing before. Precisely because what the 9 Nether 14th young master said was the truth, and Jun Moxie clearly understood it. That was why he felt so conflicted. Because even if it was true, this reason was too dang powerful. Don't tell me that you don't intend to find a wife in this entire life? Jun Moxie stretched out his hand without putting up his guard. The 9 Nether 14th young master also grabbed young master Jun's outstretched hand without any hesitation, and also similarly channeled his 9 Nether's essence chi into Jun Moxie's unguarded meridians slowly. The entire process was so harmonious and natural, as if they had done this countless times before. Two formidable people of the world had entrusted their lives into each other's hands at the same time. This was undoubtedly a first. The most precious trust in this world. The 9 Nether 14th young master laughed bitterly and replied, "Us, the 9 Nethers race, have a much longer lifespan than the people of this continent. If we wished to find a wife, it would mean finding a lifelong companion. Before our cultivation has reached the level where we can defy heavens and alter someone else's fate, truly developing feelings would be the equivalent of harming ourselves and others." Jun Moxie silently listened to the 9 Nether 14th young master as he directed the 9 Nether's essence chi into the 3rd level of the Hongjun Pagoda, allowing it to slowly interact with the flame of primal chaos. He slowly channeled his thoughts to express his intentions while he replied verbally. "That's not right. I know that the 9 Nether first young master had over 100 wives. How can this be explained?" The 9 Nether 14th young master scoffed. "Is it that hard to understand? What sort of person was the 9 Nether first young master? Even if he found 10,000 wives, he could alter all their fates and let them live for eternity. Didn't I say it earlier? As long as our own cultivation reached the level of defying the heavens, then there won't be such restrictions." That still doesn't tally. It's completely different from that whole lifelong companion you spoke of. Shouldn't there be only one lifelong companion? Jun Moxie questioned. The 9 Nether 14th young master raised a brow. What sort of logic is that? Who told you that you can only have one lifelong companion? As long as you are capable enough, even if you marry all the women of this world, it's all up to you. 1 or 100. Is there a difference? Your logic is truly ridiculous. Jun Moxie was stumped. To marry all the women of this world? And be so self-justified about it? To even say that my logic was ridiculous? Who is it that is truly ridiculous? This is too powerful. Turns out you're really open-minded. I'm truly impressed." Jun Moxie finally gave his sincere praise after being stumped for a good while. "Not even talking about anything else. Just the strength of your hips is enough to make me prostrate in admiration." "That's just you being too inexperienced. What has this got to do with the strength of my hips?" The 9 Nether 14th young master rolled his eyes. You just have to lay still and enjoy. Jun Moxie instantly felt like crying. He was utterly defeated. This old master is too powerful. That sort of treatment he receives, versus me, dedicating myself completely, willingly undertaking the task of moving, only to not even get any sort of relief. In the Hongjun Pagoda, the flame of primal chaos flickered, carefully coming into contact with that misty, black nine Nethers essence chi that Jun Moxie had directed in, as if it had carefully examined it. Then with a flash, it returned back to its original position, slowly burning. It's done. Jun Moxie asked mentally. Aren't you too lazy? Give a clear answer whether it is all right or not. Ah. The flame of primal chaos remained unmoved, burning away slowly, completely ignoring a certain moron's question. This old master didn't incinerate all of it yet. Isn't that already a pass? Do you still need to ask? How dumb can you get? Why did this old master, with all of his brilliance, end up with such a moronic master? Feck. Give some sort of response. Jun Moxie said impatiently. Is it that difficult to just say yes or no? Pooh. Even the Hongjun Pagoda couldn't stand it anymore and spat Jun Moxie out. I really have never met one as moronic as this. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1235. Today marks history. It's done. It was the 9 Nether 14th young master who said this. As he spoke, he discreetly tucked his 9 Nether essence chi away. Jun Moxie looked at him in shock. Didn't you feel it? That mysterious flame had already left a temporary brand on my 9 Nether essence chi. The 9 Nether 14th young master said with a smile. It was a really faint one. Which means it probably acknowledged my control of it once. And this is it. Jun Moxie let out a sigh of relief and grumbled. You should be satisfied that you're allowed to control it even once. Do you even know what sort of flame that is? I had always been wondering, can such divine flame really be controlled by human strength? Now, I finally understand. Although this flame is on you and is a part of you, it is separated from you. At least, it is not created by you, right? The 9 Nether 14th young master looked at him interestingly. Jun Moxie, you're one brat with lots of secrets. So what? There are even greater ones that you haven't seen yet. Jun Moxie scoffed, completely unsurprised. It'd really be odd if the 9 Nether 14th young master couldn't detect this. You're that 9 firmament first old master that helped me out back then, right? The 9 Nether 14th young master said nonchalantly, looking into the skies. Jun Moxie laughed awkwardly. Where did this come from? What reasons do you have for this opinion? There's none. It's just a feeling. Actually, I had this feeling for a long time. But you were too weak, so I couldn't confirm it. But now, you're qualified enough to pose a threat to me, so I became surer of it. That's right. It's me. Jun Moxie raised his brow. The 9 firmament first old master. You brat really are brazen. Do you know that this random name you gave yourself that day offended the biggest taboos of our 9 Nethers? Just because of the 5 words, 9 firmament first old master. You and I are destined for an inevitable death battle. After this war, if we are both alive, I'll definitely fight with you. Jun Moxie's gaze turned incisive. I had already wanted to seek the guidance of the so-called invincible arts of the 9 Nethers. How powerful is it truly? The person with the greatest chance of survival after this battle, including me, is definitely you. I believe you will definitely have the opportunity to challenge me. In fact, I too wish to see for myself how many secrets you harbor, and how powerful these hidden secrets of yours are. The 14th young master replied. Jun Moxie remained silent for a while before replying. I also believe you will have the chance. But all the 9 nether young masters may not be able to bear the extent of the secrets I carry. Then, they remained silent, putting their hands behind their back as they directed their gaze over to the outsiders' territory. How they were going to battle remained to be seen. The top priority right now was to survive this battle. Ultimately emerging victorious from it was secondary. Under their precise spiritual senses, they detected that those people were already restless. A dark red flag was already stuck on the ground before them. It was obvious they were about to move. The next moment, the shrill cry of the bugle horn rang out. All the bugle horns on the outsiders' troops, including all those that never made a move, began to cry out. Over 10,000 bungle horns cried out across the horizon. Over 800,000 men cried out. Divine Son. The greatest. A send-off by millions. Legend had it that the souls of warriors that were sent off in this manner would return back to the holy land of the Divine Sun, be worshipped by the outsiders, and have their souls last forever. This was the most formal send-off by the Divine Sun race in all of history. Right now, this ritual was being carried out for these 10,000 Saint Emperors. The instant the bungle horns rang out, the 100,000 outsiders who were attacking suddenly retreated. The noisy battlefield had suddenly turned into a sea of silence. Amidst this deathly silence, there was a heavy and chilling pressure. This was the real calm before the storm. Everyone was clear. The attack coming from the outsiders next would be unprecedented. If they all charge forward at full force, the defense line put up by the alliance of the Xian continent's forces may very likely crumble at this instant. But there was an exception. A voice rang out. Gu Han roared hysterically. Holy Land. Mo Wudao, Shi Ruochen, Huyen Aobua took a step forward in unison, with such great force that the puddles of blood on the ground splattered about. They raised their arm and roared. Holy Land. The glory of tens of thousands of years. Today is history. Today marks history. Gu Han cried out with all his might, as if he was going to shred the heavens with this cry. The glory of tens of thousands of years. Today is history. Today marks history. 7,000 Holy Land experts yelled with all their strength. Solemn, grim expressions on their faces. Practically all of them had sustained severe injuries. At this moment, they all used the heaven reversal pill Jun Moxie had given them previously. In these couple of days, Jun Moxie had been rushing about refining pills and swords, finally covering the shortage of supply of the heaven reversal pill. This was the most he could do currently. But it was this that had obtained the respect of everyone from the Holy Lands. Because the effects of a single heaven reversal pill was heaven-defying. Gifting 7,000 heaven-defying pills to your old nemesis, this magnanimity and generosity, no one from the Holy Land felt that they would be able to do it if it were them. There was no need for reminders or commands. Everyone was clear that right now, this moment was the most crucial moment. This moment was the moment they turned their lives into the most brilliant fireworks. Using their most dazzling, brilliant lives to protect the safety of the entire continent. With no turning back. Glory, history, would happen today. Under the lead of the 3 leaders of the Holy Land, 7,000 men reformed into 3 orderly units. the elusive world of immortals, illusory blood sea, and supreme golden city. They marched forward with no hesitation in their steps, determination in their eyes. 10,000 years of glory, success, and everything shall all be determined in this moment. Right and wrong, success and failure are temporary. Achievements and crimes will be determined by the history books. The three units advanced silently like three powerful currents. Everyone's backs were upright. At this final moment of their lives, their faces were filled with pride. The pride that belonged to the Holy Lands would last forever. Salute. Mei Shuyan's voice shook the skies. All the Tian Fa warriors raised their hands and saluted their past nemesis in the most respectful manner. Those bunch of scums from the three Holy Lands. The bunch that I hate the most. Because they've always eradicated any threats, be it potential or not, to their position as the protector of the continent, without any exceptions. In the skies, the 9 Nether 14th young master suddenly sighed. Before this, I never imagined that a bullshit organization like this would let me, the 9 Nether 14th young master, respect them one day. Indeed, they committed all sorts of despicable acts for their so-called beliefs. But right now, they're honorable. They, at this very moment, is worthy of our sincere respect. And their sacrifice today will write off all the enmity between us. Not only do I respect them, I'll continue respecting them from now on. Jun Moxie said. The 9 Nether 14th young master sighed. Adversity is the best test. Real heroes will only rise amidst chaos. Jun Moxie suddenly yelled from the skies. Listen up, Holy Land. The enmity between us shall be written off with this. I, Jun Moxie, in the name of the evil monarch, promise you that I will definitely slay Zhang Kuang and seek revenge for you. Jun Moxie's voice was extremely agitated when he said the last few words. He knew that it was only the duty of the three Holy Lands to fight against the outsiders. The outsiders may be their opponent, but they had never been their enemy. The real, greatest enemy of the three Holy Lands was still Zhang Kuang. And only Zhang Kuang. It was undoubtedly the greatest regret of everyone from the three Holy Lands to be unable to kill Zhang Kuang and seek revenge. Today, right now, at the moment they resolutely, vehemently were about to meet death, Jun Moxie had given this absolutely difficult promise. Zhang Kuang. The cultivation of a half-sage. A body that cannot be killed. How could he be killed easily? But Jun Moxie still promised to do it. Because Jun Moxie's conscience didn't allow him to let these warriors go onto the Yellow Springs with regrets. Even if they were willing to. Many thanks. Mo Wudao raised his head, locking eyes with Jun Moxie as he cupped his fists. All 7,000 men cuffed their fists in unison. Then, they walked ahead with their heads held high. Jun Moxie felt a surge of emotions. He suddenly waved his hand and 3 giant flags fell from the skies, unfurling in the air. There were golden words written on each of them, glistening brightly. Elusive world of immortals, illusory blood sea, supreme golden city. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1236. A tune of the 9 Nethers. 1,000 miles soul chasing. As Mo Wudao and the rest reached out to grab the flags that fell from the skies, their eyes brightened. It was as if their lives had suddenly brightened up this instant. As if the spark in their souls was flickering fervently. As if that glory of 10,000 years had finally returned back to them in this moment. as if this battle flag represented the acknowledgement and gratitude of the entire continent. This life had not been in vain. Heroes from the Holy Lands, have a good journey, Jun Moxie shouted. I, Jun Moxie, send you off here. Then, he slowly raised his hands and cupped his fists solemnly, saluting the solemn army on the ground. Everyone from the Holy Land fell silent and suddenly replied in unison. Evil monarch, friend or foe in our next life, we will remember this kindness. When Jun Moxie gave them the heaven reversal pill, they had accepted it indifferently. When Jun Moxie treated their injuries, they remained unmoved. Even when Jun Moxie delivered weapons for them, they didn't say anything. But right now, they were genuinely grateful, from their hearts, for Jun Moxie's understanding. Because Jun Moxie represented the entire continent at this moment. Then, these 7,000 men from the 3 Holy Lands walked out, without turning back. In the end, the isolated 5 survivors that had followed Xia Changtian joined the Holy Lands' troops without any hesitation. No one was surprised by their sudden return. Everyone accepted them without any reaction. No matter how it was in the past, right now, they were comrades that were going to meet their deaths. That was all. Fighting alongside in the mortal realm. Working hand in hand on the journey to the Yellow Springs. Mo Wudao, Shi Ruochen, Huyen Aobua, Leng Tong, Chu Wuhui, Cheng Yin Xiao. All of them walked over with great resolute and calmness. In the air, Gu Han shut his eyes tightly, and 2 clear trails of tears finally couldn't help but overflow from his eyes. 7,000 disciples, the last elite forces of the Holy Lands. From this day on, the glorious 3 Holy Lands of the continent would finally become history, turning into a steel. From the opposite side, Chuangshang Beidao's eerie voice rang out. The warriors of Divine Sun, your moment of glory has arrived. The divine gods have already opened up their arms for your contributions today. Your name and stories will be passed down for centuries. Your souls will definitely return back into the warm embrace of the divine Sun God, never to be destroyed. Warriors, for the tomorrow of the divine Sun clan, for your eternity. Charge! Chuangshang Beidao suddenly sucked in a deep breath of air and yelled. Kill! Kill! Almost 20,000 Saint Emperor warriors of the outsiders roared hysterically. Then, they surged forward like waves. There were still almost 10,000 peak experts behind them standing guard. Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master furrowed their brows in unison. They could tell that those 10,000 people behind were the real threat from the outsiders. They were the ones who had truly obtained their high levels of cultivation through their own capabilities. Get ready. It's really about to start. Jun Moxie growled. The 9 Nether 14th young master held his divine tune in his hands and said, try to disperse the range of the attacks. That flame of yours will not reduce its prowesses even if it's split into the smallest bits. I understand. With my current strength, I can only release a single round of them at full force within the shortest possible time. If I wish to do it again, it'll be at least 2 hours later. How many of them do you reckon we can take down with a single round? This is hard to say. We can only do our best. The 9 Nether 14th young master's expression also turned unusually serious. He knew what Jun Moxie meant. Although the 3 Holy Lands had been prepared to make sacrifices, the moment for their sacrifice should be when dealing with those 10,000 experts from the outsiders who were the real threat, and not these 20,000 men charging forward to be cannon fodder. Whether these 20,000 men could deal damage, And what sort of damage they could inflict was completely dependent on how the 9 Nether 14th young masters played his tune. 1,000 miles soul-chasing sword. Could it really chase souls for 1,000 miles? On the battlefield, the two troops were rapidly closing in on each other. Those from the Holy Lands strode forward silently while the outsiders were charging forward while shrieking and yelling in a crazed manner. One side was completely silent, while the other was deafening. This was the starkest contrast. Those from the outsiders' side were experts of Saint Emperor levels, even if it was a cultivation level obtained through some secret methods. They were still Saint Emperors and moved with extreme speed. In a flash, the entire troop had already passed the empty central region. Suddenly, with a single whistle from the skies, the entire place turned dark. And the darkening of the horizon was due to countless tiny black flames floating in the air, covering the entire place. At the same time, an endless, solemn murderous aura engulfed the entire place. There was an agitated tune that rang out, ringing out through the air. A tune of the 9 Nethers, 1,000 miles soul-chasing. The moment this sound rang out, even the Saint Monarchs would feel as if the entire air was filled with chilling, sharp swords with this tune. As if there were billions of deadly swords gathering in the air, waiting to fire. The 9 Nether 14th young master had used all the 9 Nether's essence chi in his body, allowing it to blaze and form into a giant black cloud. The divine tune had begun with an extremely sharp pitch. When it reached its greatest volume, hong, it was as if something had exploded in the air. Then, countless of black swords appeared in the air. There were at least 10,000 of them. With a sharp whistle, these black swords came charging down. All the flame of primal chaos floating in the air attached themselves to it and came rushing down at high speed. As if a snail that was moving slowly had suddenly transformed into an eagle swooping down for its prey. From the moment the black flames appeared to the moment they came rushing down at high speed, less than a fraction of the blink of an eye passed. All the outsiders continued charging forward without a care, with their chests held high. This sudden attack from the skies had undoubtedly covered a great area and was impressive. If this wave of attacks was directed at 10 or hundreds of people, it may be able to obtain considerable results. However, the targeted range were in the tens of thousands. No matter who was the one launching this attack from the skies, it was still merely one person. How powerful could the strength of one person get? Even if the person attacking was a sage, it may not be effective when trying to attack 20,000 Saint Emperors simultaneously. The strength of one person alone would never reach this sort of level. If one could truly cripple an army of more than 10,000 men, he'd really be a legend. As there was a limit to a person's capabilities, it was impossible to create this sort of miracle. Thus, the outsiders completely did not concern themselves with it. This wave of attack would probably scare them a little. That's all. Since we've already decided to not return back alive, how effective can a scare tactic like this get? Even if that black sword pierces through our chests, it will definitely not break past our protective chi. What a joke. The person who is able to launch such an overwhelming attack is undoubtedly a peak expert. But he did it like a fool. Could it be the legendary retard? With this sort of mindset, all the outsiders did not feel any threat from this large-scale attack. All of them used their bodies as weapons and charged right through. As long as they came into contact with the enemy, they'd instantly self-detonate. Everyone made up their minds. But at the next moment, cruel reality ruthlessly foiled their plans. The black sword approached at the speed of light, practically surpassing all possible speed. The outsiders' troops were rather concentrated in the first place, and 4/5 of them were covered in the range of this attack. At this point, the swords had already vanished. But they had already accomplished their mission beautifully. Small black flames had silently attached onto the bodies of numerous outsiders. And there was quite a number of them attached on some. The real show was about to begin. Halt! Mo Wudao raised his hand with a cold expression. The Holy Land's army halted in their tracks. Everyone's eyes were filled with caution as they gazed silently at those tiny black flames. The memories from a couple of days ago, when this flame burnt tens of experts of the Holy Lands, replayed in their minds. That sort of elegant cruelty made their scalps crawl. The scene before their eyes made everyone know that Jun Moxie had launched his attack. The swords, compromising for speed, had indeed not dealt much damage. This bunch of outsiders charged forward gleefully, planning to self-detonate. But a pitiful shriek rang out from the center. It was definitely an unlucky fellow. The flame of primal chaos had coincidentally landed on the exposed part of his face. With this cry, countless of pitiful cries began to ring out incessantly. Thousands of them began to roll on the ground in agony. And there were more that shrieked in hysteria, trying to put something out on their bodies in a frenzy, rolling on the ground in vain. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1237. Wiped out. And every single roll and beating they did only resulted in this black flame to grow bigger. Because this was the flame of primal chaos. The origin of fire in this entire universe. It could burn chi, body, souls, ground, and even air. It could burn anything without medium. There was also nothing that could interfere with the flame of primal chaos burning. This world itself was also something that the flame of primal chaos could burn. So what more? Fragile flesh and body? All sort of struggle was futile. Even if it was the powerful flesh of a saint emperor, it was insignificant in the face of the flame of primal chaos. Over 15,000 outsiders rolled about on the ground in anguish, crying in agony. Their entire bodies convulsed and spasmed. One person decisively drew their sword and chopped off the part that was on fire, only to realize their brave act was pointless. The limb that was cut continued to burn. And there were also black flames dancing at the part he had chopped. Even the sword began to burn because of the contact with the flame. Some of them wanted to end their lives by self-detonating, being unable to endure the pain. But to their horror, they couldn't control their strength freely since the moment that weird flame had stuck onto them. They couldn't even self-detonate. Even their souls couldn't budge. The only thing they could do was watch themselves burn into nothingness. Those 4,000 outsiders that were fortunate enough to avoid this fate suddenly stopped due to the sudden change. One of them widened his eyes in shock at the entire sea of black flames before him. Only endless fear remained in their hearts. They were indeed unafraid of death. The moment they received this mission, they knew they were definitely doomed. But they were afraid of such an odd death. This matter had clearly surpassed the extent of their imaginations. They had never dreamt that such a bizarre thing existed in this world. To be able to silently devour 16,000 Saint Emperor experts. These were Saint Emperors, 16,000 Saint Emperors. Even if they were Saint Emperors created through some tabooed methods, before the effects faded off, they were real Saint Emperors. But they were screaming in agony like this, on the ground. Even if it weren't Saint Emperors but pigs instead, it'd take a considerable amount of time to slaughter all of them. Even if it was chopping their heads off one by one, It would be enough to exhaust a Saint Emperor. But now, this incomprehensible matter had occurred before their eyes. These people were the most loyal warriors of the Divine Sun. All of them were unafraid of death. Even if you crushed their bones, they would not scream in pain. What more? In such great hysteria. That black, elegant, mysterious flame completely made them give up. They lost their courage and dignity, groveling like pitiful worms. Their tragic screams could scare off wolves. Why was it like this? The remaining 4,000 men stood rooted to their spots, as if they had turned into statues at this moment. Almost 4,000 Saint Emperors, afraid to move. That mysterious black flame continued to burn elegantly, gradually joining back together to form into a giant panel that stretched for miles, completely cutting the path of both sides. Both sides were ready to stake their lives and couldn't care less about it. But right now, they could only look on. They couldn't go past. They were afraid to go past. As if this black flame was a line that divided the two worlds. There wasn't much from the Holy Lands, because it was still their victory after all. And most importantly, they had witnessed the terrifying extent of these flames. But it was completely different for the Divine Sun. Chuangshan Beidao's vehement, intense, and resolute speech from earlier had turned into a complete joke before this black flame. 16,000 Saint Emperors continued to cry in agony as their bodies gradually dissipated, completely erased from existence. Those remaining 4,000 continued to look from where they were, trembling in fear. It was a complete irony compared to how they were a moment ago. With this sudden change in situation, Chuangshan Beidao only felt his face burning as he boiled with anger. There was an immense feeling of shame. How embarrassing awe! How humiliating awe! The Divine Sun's face was completely shoved into their pants. A pair of pants that was covered in shut. How can this be endured? Ah! Who are you? Come out! Come out if you dare! Ah! Chuangshan Beidao yelled irrationally, shaking his fists. His entire face was red. Because of this person, all the warriors of the Divine Sun had turned into a joke. A complete joke. Even if they successfully conquered the Xian continent, this scene would be a stain in the history of the Divine Sun. A huge insult. Ah! And this person was someone who could annihilate over 16,000 Saint Emperors with a single strike. This terrifying fact incited the murderous intent of Chuangshan Beidao. There will never be peace until this person is erased. All these fake Saint Emperors who were cannon fodder had used the secret methods of the Divine Sun to boost their strength. After this successful enhancement, they all had the capabilities of Saint Emperors, but only for 2 days. And in these 2 days, all their potential would be unleashed, so their own strength would also grow with it, to the peak levels. And this would last for 4 hours, which was long enough to accomplish anything. Those who accepted this secret method would also ultimately die due to the weakening of their life force, even if they did not self-detonate. But they were Saint Emperors for these 2 days while the method remained in effect. This was without a doubt. Even if they met with real Saint Emperors, they were only lacking in experience, not strength. They may even be stronger, since they constantly grew, and could be said to be a super weapon. And that attack just now had eradicated more than 80% of them. And those who survived had completely lost the will to fight. This outcome was unimaginable for Chuangshan Beidao. Due to the distance, Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master had used their own skills to camouflage in the clouds. What Chuangshan Beidao didn't know was that this glorious battle outcome was the work of 2 people. Plus, Chuanshang Beidao had never encountered the 9 Nether 14th young master. So he had logically pinned this achievement on that invincible expert who could injure him with one look. He had truly thought too highly of young Master Jun. As he looked at the black flames that cut off the two forces, Chuanshang Beidao could only look on helplessly, unable to do anything about it. Those two above completely treated his yelling as the yapping of a mutt. They weren't purely ignoring him out of disdain, but because they were really drained. Jun Moxie had completely exerted his limits to suddenly scatter so much flame of primal chaos in a single moment. Without the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, it would have been completely impossible. Even with the support of the Hongjun Pagoda, he still had to pay a considerable price. That single attack had instantly drained all of the spirit energy in his body. Although there wasn't an intense backlash, young Master Jun really no longer had any strength. To be able to remain in the air was already remarkable. He was meditating to quickly recover, so he didn't have the time to bother with the yells of that perverse outsider being. As to the 9 Nether 14th young master, that tune of 1,000 miles soul chasing had also turned him into an empty shell. He was even worse off than young Master Jun, also recovering with all his might. There was quite a huge disturbance from their recovering process. The spiritual chi in the air rapidly formed into a whirlpool, sucking in all the air from all directions. There was not the slightest bit of spirit energy left on the battlefield. Even if there were a little bit left lingering, it could not be used. Everyone felt an indescribable feeling of suffocation. The spirit energy in the air formed into countless huge tornadoes and surged into both their bodies. On Jun Moxie's side, it was a dazzling purple glow, while the 9 Nether 14th young master's side was an overwhelming, chilling black. But the close proximity between them made them look as if half of them was an angel, while the other was the devil. An indescribable oddness. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1238. Heaven and Earth. Crumble. The violently swirling spiritual chi completely wrapped around the two, covering them tightly. It was impossible for anyone outside to see what was happening inside the mist. Even until now, the flame of primal chaos was still burning fiercely on the ground, as if it would remain burning for eternity. The remaining death troop of Saint Emperors had all been scared silly, and none of them dared to go near the fearsome black flames. The 7,000 elite experts of the Holy Lands had even more crazed expressions than the outsiders as they looked at the black flames. They all stood silently, motionless. Only their blood-drenched robes fluttered lethargically in the wind. The entire battlefield suddenly fell silent for more than 2 hours. The flame of primal chaos also burned for more than 2 hours. Everything on the battlefield was completely burned away because of the flame of primal chaos. The air was gone. The corpses was gone. The blood was gone. And even, the ground was gone. A huge black hole had appeared at the place where the flame of primal chaos had been burning a moment ago. It was a massive black hole, like an endless abyss, or even a spatial void. Jun Moxie hovered high in the sky while the spiritual chi storm around him grew stronger and stronger before finally calming down gradually. Jun Moxie opened his eyes as a pair of bright lights shone from them. Beside him, the 9 Nether 14th young master seemed to have coordinated perfectly with young Master Jun, opening his eyes at practically the same instant. Jun Moxie's art of unlocking heaven's fortune was incredibly miraculous, and 9 Nether 14th young master's cultivation technique was completely unique. Yet, both of them had woken up together. Their eyes met, and both of them revealed a slight smile on their faces. After draining himself to the extreme and then filling his energy back up again so quickly, Jun Moxie was now only one step away from the 7th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. On the other side, the 9 Nether 14th young master also felt that he could almost break through the seal on himself. The both of them could keenly sense that if they gave it a bit of a push, they could definitely complete their breakthrough. However, both of them stopped right before the gates of the breakthrough. This was a battlefield. But breaking through to a new realm required a considerable amount of time to consolidate their cultivation. Even with the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie would still need at least half a night to consolidate his cultivation if he broke through now. As for the 9 Nether 14th young master, he might need an even longer time. Even with 1 or 2 days, it might not necessarily be enough. With how fierce and intense the battle was, it would definitely not give them the time they needed. That black flame of yours is truly a magical thing. The 9 Nether 14th young master sighed lightly and said. Even a wisp of energy from the temporary branding contains such heavy traces of a great Tao. Just by coming into contact with it for a short time has already benefited me greatly. The 9 Nether 14th young master's eyes were somewhat conflicted. In the end, he still clasped his fists sincerely and said, Jun Moxie, this young master truly thanks you this time. No, I don't dare to accept your thanks. If you hadn't helped me out, how would I have managed to unleash such a level of power? If not for that, I wouldn't have been able to reach this point where I could break through at any time. Jun Moxie smiled and shook his head. All that needs to be said has already been said without words. Huh. What a good, all that needs to be said has already been said without words. The 9 Nether 14th young master laughed aloud carefreely. Jun Moxie looked at the huge void burnt by the flame of primal chaos with furrowed brows. With a slight sigh, he lifted his right hand. In the next moment, a bundle of black flames flew out from the black hole. Somehow, the originally black void instantly filled up with soil, and the gigantic black hole that spanned several hundred li disappeared without a trace. With a wave of his hand, the flame of primal chaos that was hovering in the air directly disappeared from this world. All that remained was a patch of slightly muddy ground. On both sides of the newly filled ground, the two armies stared at each other. It was as if the fearsome flame of primal chaos that had just swallowed 16,000 experts had been nothing but an illusion. Chuangshang Beidao was just considering if he should send his army around the black pit to attack. But unexpectedly, the ground had reappeared once again. In that moment, Chuangshang Beidao was suddenly uncertain and suspicious. However, he clearly did not have the luxury of time to think too much about it. Because there wasn't much time left for this group of people. Chuangshang Beidao had used a secret technique to raise the strength of those 20,000 Death Knights to the Saint Emperor realm. And even then, he hadn't sent them out to battle, instead allowing them to continue pushing the technique to the limit, until they reached the peak of the Saint Emperor realm. Although those Death Knights would only have about 4 hours remaining to fight, that was still 4 hours of reinforcements from 20,000 peak-level Saint Emperors. Within that 4 hours, no forces in the world would be able to do anything to stop the death army of peak Saint Emperors. Even sages were useless against them. Too many things could be done in 4 hours with an unstoppable army like that. However, the world was just so strange and miraculous. The joint attack by Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master had not only destroyed 80% of this unstoppable army, it had even delayed them for more than 2 hours, in addition to the time they'd wasted making preparations. Right now, this previously formidable only had less than an hour of time left. If they couldn't self-detonate and perish with their enemies within that 1 hour, their entire lives would have been wasted. Heaven was truly making fun of people. And then, the remaining 4,000 or so people whose morale had already dropped to the bottom of the abyss discovered that there was now an empty space that spanned several hundred li between themselves and their enemies. This was an incredibly short distance normally. But in this moment, when they lacked time, it was a distance that meant the difference between victory and defeat. Time was money. Time was life. In that moment, Chuanshang Beidao truly had a heartfelt understanding of those words. So in the instant that Chuanshang Beidao saw the ground being refilled, he did not hesitate and immediately waved his hand, roaring at the 4,000 remaining Death Knights. Charge! For the glory of the Divine Sun, charge! Kill them all! Chuanshang Beidao was still the #1 expert on the outsiders' army's side. The moment his shout left his mouth, all the dreary mood was completely washed away, and morale surged through the army again. A chorus of roars rang out as the over 4,000 Death Knights rushed forward without care. Chuanshang Beidao was already exceedingly jittery right now, where he would be startled even by the rustling of the wind. He watched nervously as the first soldier stepped onto the reappeared ground. The ground didn't seem to have anything strange about it, and it was as sturdy as before. In that moment, he could not help but to sigh with relief. Looks like the ground is still the same, the fire hadn't burned through it entirely for some reason. Although the black flames looked strange, at least it wasn't all powerful. In a short moment, all of the 4,000 plus people had already rushed over. Within a short time, they could definitely unleash hellish damage onto the allied army's ranks. In that moment, Chuanshang Beidao could not help but feel another bout of confidence in his heart. With another wave of his hands, the entire army howled and charged forward together. Although there were only 4,000 Death Knights left, it was enough to blast a way through for them. Chuanshang Beidao consoled himself in his heart as he stared fixedly at the battlefield. The 7,000 plus experts on the other side had already turned into ashes in his eyes. But how would Jun Moxie be so kind-hearted as to refill this piece of land so that his enemies would be able to attack his army? There was definitely something fishy about that move of his. And as expected, the fishy scheme was here. Everything had simply been a sleight of hand, a trick. The ground had indeed been refilled, but it was only the most superficial layer using the power of Earth. It was only holding still right now because it was supported by the power of Earth. In truth, it was only a huge, floating bridge. The moment the feet of those 4,000 Death Knights landed securely onto this bridge, an evil smile appeared on Jun Moxie's suave face. Under the gaping eyes of the 9 Nether 14th young master, the former yelled, "Power of water! Move!" With a roaring sound, a heavenly river once again poured down from the sky. This time, it was even more fearsome than before. Not only did the power of water automatically draw water from the surroundings, Jun Moxie even took out some water from the Hongjun Pagoda and poured it out together. All of a sudden, the area before the Holy Land's army turned into a raging river with towering waves. Countless outsiders experts who had been charging through were forcefully smashed down by the sudden torrent of water, turning into drenched chickens. After Jun Moxie confirmed that all the outsiders experts had been washed onto the ground, and the water had also clouded everyone's vision, he laughed aloud and waved his hands dramatically. Collapse for this daddy. Collapse on those fecking Divine Sun dogs. Divine Sun my ass. Divine Toilet is more like it. With a loud roar, the ground suddenly crumbled, and without any exception, every single one of those 4,000 Death Knights were flushed into the deep pit. That sound was exceedingly loud. Countless gigantic waves continuously splashed high into the sky. At this juncture, even if these peak Saint Emperor experts didn't want to self-detonate, they wouldn't be able to survive. It didn't matter anymore if there were any enemies around them. In any case, it was impossible to see anything with so much water. At least, by self-detonating like this, they would be able to die swiftly, and their souls would still be able to enter the yellow springs. If they insisted on trying to keep their lives, they would instead be ridiculed as cowards. With these kinds of thoughts, the over 4,000 Saint Emperors unanimously decided to self-detonate together. Mo Wudao and the rest were completely stunned, speechless. They'd originally thought that they would be going out today to sacrifice their lives. But who would have thought that they would get to see 2 free shows of fireworks? This was simply too magnificent. Each show was more exciting and grander than the last. Such a show was simply amazing and shocking awe. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1239. Patch after patch. Such an intense tremor caused the entire land to shake and show signs of crumbling. The experts on the Holy Land side hurriedly soared into the sky, distancing several tens of zhang away before regaining their stability. When they looked down again, a huge piece of the land which they had been standing on earlier had already collapsed. On the Allied army's side, the ground stabilized after a period of shaking. But on the other side, the tremors showed no signs of relenting at all. With young Master Jun's temper, how would he possibly stop at just that? Moreover, there were still over 4,000 Saint Emperors hoping to blast a path open. If he went ahead to forcefully stop the ground from collapsing, the one who would suffer the most would be himself. He might as well borrow the strength of this huge force and combine it with his power of earth, pushing this entire patch of land to collapse together. This was a classic case of rising with the tide. This was a situation that young Master Jun could not have wished for even in his dreams. Now that it had happened in front of his eyes, he wouldn't be Jun Moxie if he didn't grab hold of the chance. On the side of the outsiders, the army had already begun charging at full force at the command of Chuangshang Beidao. The 4,000 Death Knights had prepared themselves to blast a path through and end the war, while the main army had also followed behind with invigorated fervor. All of them were incredibly excited that they were finally going to charge into the Xian continent. With their confidence soaring, all of them were running forward with all their strength. By the time they realized that something was wrong, the ones running in front had already crossed into the edge of that dark hole. With their momentum, it was basically impossible to stop. Many of them were charging forward, hooting excitedly, when they suddenly discovered that there was nothing under their feet. They even managed to take many steps forward through the air because of the momentum, before realizing what had happened. Then, with their arms and feet flailing desperately, they dropped downwards, shrieking loudly. The intense excitement turned into extreme fear in a mere instant. The people who were slightly behind naturally managed to discover the anomaly in front, and they hurriedly stopped their feet. Those at the front also howled loudly, informing the people behind them. But in such a chaotic situation, who could really hear what the people at the front were saying? The army behind had already begun to charge with full force, rushing forward with a momentum like a mighty ocean. Such a force was not something that could be stopped simply because they said so. And so, those in the front could only scream helplessly. Even as they shrieked, they plunged directly into the black hole like dumplings dropped into a pot of boiling water. Such a sight was truly something to behold. Many people forcefully stopped, refusing to move forward no matter what. However, what happened next was that they were directly trampled by the stampede until even their bones were crushed. Jun Moxie saw that the situation was so good, so he directly used the power of earth to push the situation further. making another patch of black hole. Another group of clueless outsiders experts directly fell into the new hole, still screaming about murdering their enemies. Their faces that were filled with ferocity instantly turned into endless confusion before being fully painted with terror. One had to say that this combination of the flame of primal chaos and the power of earth was truly perfect. This immensely powerful effect was definitely not as simple as 1 plus 1. In addition to being speed buffed by the 9 Nether 14th Young Master, the flame of primal chaos had been burning for more than 2 hours. Truthfully, the ground had already burned through several thousand zhang of land. In such circumstances, using the power of earth together, directly multiplied the effect's numerous folds. Furthermore, there was even the explosive force generated by 4,000 peak Saint Emperors. If the flame of primal chaos had not burned there for such a long time, with Jun Moxie's abilities, it would already be his limit to create a hole of a few hundred zhang deep. And such a hole would never be as wide as this one. If that was the case, the enemy experts would not die at all. At most, they would only need to spend a bit more effort to crawl back out. But this hole now was several thousand zhang deep. Also, their own comrades were falling down atop of them like heavy stones. The rate of survival. And, perhaps if they burnt incense by the ton and prayed to the gods while offering up their next tens of lifetimes in servitude to the gods, they might have a tiny shred of hope. Apart from that, it was pretty much hopeless. Chuangshang Beidao stared at the scene before him with wide eyes and open mouth, unable to process the scenario. Everything happening now seemed to be a dream. But, even the most terrifying nightmare didn't seem to be this cruel. It wasn't just the outsiders' side. Everyone on the battlefield had practically been stunned into wooden statues. Jun Moxie spammed the power of earth freely, enjoying himself to his heart's content. The ground had become exceedingly unstable after the combined self-detonation force of 4,000 peak Saint Emperors. With every wave of his hand, a patch of black hole several tens of zhang wide would appear on the ground. These holes were not very useful against the saints and Saint Emperors that were quite some distance away from the main hole. However, against the normal outsiders soldiers below Spirit Xian, they all fell into these holes like dumplings. Patch after patch. Jun Moxie waved his hands casually and recited a poem happily. 1 patch. 2 patch. 3. 4 patch. 5 patch. 6 patch. 7. 8 patch. 9 patch. 10 patch. 11. On the side, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master looked at him with an expression as though he was looking at a monster. Disregarding the strange looks, he smiled casually and added the last sentence. All disappearing and falling into the black hole. Turning around, he asked with a proud expression. 14th bro, how was this poem of mine? The 9 Nether 14th Young Master widened his eyes, staring at Jun Moxie as though he was looking at a freak of nature. Then, he turned and looked at the hellish situation at the bottom. Opening and closing his mouth repeatedly, he was unable to say a single word. After a long time, he finally shook his head and sighed. The world calls me a devil of calamity, a murderous madman. But after looking at you, this young master truly feels that I'm just a frog at the bottom of the well. Today, I've finally seen just how wide the heavenly river is. This young master feels utterly ashamed of my inadequacy and willingly accepts my inferiority. In a somewhat dispirited manner, he added, compared to you, what qualifications do I have to be called a devil of calamity? You've really overpraised me. Brother 14th is truly too kind with your words. Jun Moxie laughed happily and shook his head humbly. Truthfully, I feel that. I haven't done well enough. Hearing this, the 14th young master rolled his eyes and turned away. Gritting his teeth, he thought. Compared to this fellow, I seem like an incredibly kind soul. I would be a kindly saint that had cultivated atop a mountain, set apart from the world for 100 years. Feck. On the ground, the #1 expert of the outsiders, Chuangshang Beidao, suddenly howled with pain and violently spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood that soared tens of zhang through the air. Clutching his chest, he roared. Bully! Bully! Bastard! Seized with anger, this #1 expert of the outsiders was unable to complete even a single sentence. His hands trembled intensely as if he were suffering a stroke. One could not blame Chuangshang Beidao for being unable to control himself at this point. The mental impact that he'd suffered was truly too heavy. In just a swift instance, he'd lost over 100,000 soldiers, all of them falling into holes they would never come out from. The outsiders' army did have huge numbers of soldiers, but they couldn't just have over 100,000 soldiers die just like that too. Especially since those 100,000 soldiers had not even managed to kill a single enemy on the other side. This was simply too difficult to accept. Right now, Chuangshang Beidao was like a tiny leaf being tossed around in a windstorm, or a frail and pitiful girl who had just been treated roughly by 100 large dudes taking their turns to abuse her. AI, that fellow wouldn't have ruptured a blood vessel in his brain, right? Jun Moxie looked at Chuangshang Beidao from far away and sighed in a sympathetic manner. How pitiful. Hearing this, the 14th young master suddenly felt an impulse to spit out a mouthful of blood as well. He'd seen his share of people gloating over others' misfortune, or cats crying for the rats they killed. But this fellow had wiped out the other party's 20,000 Saint Emperors and conveniently took out at least 100,000 outsiders' soldiers. And he did not lose even a single hair on his side. Yet, he could still do that? The 14th young master finally truly understood the meaning of the phrase. Only when knowledge was truly needed would one realize that the books they'd read were too few. At this point, he suddenly realized that he didn't know any appropriate words that could be used to describe this fellow who was laughing and smiling as widely as a hippopotamus. Everybody called this young master an evil demon, but even all the people that this young master had killed in this entire lifetime of several thousand years was fewer than the number that he'd killed in just this 1 hour. Woo, compared to him. I'm truly too pure. What did the word despicable mean? What did the word shameless mean? Today, he'd finally witnessed the true standard of those words. The entire battlefield suddenly became completely silent until the sound of a pin drop could be heard. Whether it was the continent's allied army, or the outsiders' army, everyone was practically holding their breaths. Their eyes were twitching as they stared at the gigantic crater in the middle that had widened by at least 1-fold. The menacing black hole seemed to be still emanating darkness. It was like an incomparably huge demon's mouth, gaping greedily. Change a direction. Kill, kill, kill. Chuangshang Beidao's voice sounded as though he was crying. It felt as if he was going to spit out a mouthful of blood with every word. The remaining 10,000 soldiers. Charge forward. Kill them all. Kill, kill, kill. The remaining 10,000 soldiers naturally referred to their final trump card. The 10,000 plus true saints and Saint Emperor experts. Those 10,000 experts quickly adjusted their minds and turned towards another direction. Although they needed to detour for at least several hundred li, it was still better than standing there like idiots. Even if all of them died on the battlefield on the other side, it would at least be of more value than being scared to death while standing on their side. After sustaining a disastrous loss of over 100,000 frontline soldiers, the outsiders' main army recharged their battle will and followed after the experts to take the detour. The only thing was that the attack this time was much more subdued. The excited and highly charged morale from before had already disappeared completely. As for Chuangshan Beidao himself, he had joined up with the other 6 Saint Monarch level experts on the outsiders' side, charging upwards fiercely like rockets towards the position where Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master were. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1240. 1 over you. How quick was the speed of Saint Monarchs? In just a mere instant, they'd already arrived before the 2 young masters' faces. Bastards! Who was that bully just now? Chuangshan Beidao's eyes blazed with fury as he looked at Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master. A hint of confusion hung on his face. Why is it 2 people? Wasn't it just 1? This isn't right. The 9 Nether 14th young master's face turned cold instantly. What kind of a person was he? Even if Chuangshan Beidao was a 4th level Saint Monarch, he didn't have the qualifications to scream and shout in front of him. How could the pride of the number 1 expert under the skies be tainted by such disgusting creatures as the outsiders? Jun Moxie's eyes also shone for a moment, but for some reason, he quietly took a step back. Chuangshan Beidao hadn't seen Jun Moxie's true appearance before, so although he could sense that Jun Moxie's cultivation was not inferior to him, that peerless expert could not possibly be this young man. That apocalyptic level of destruction was also definitely not something a 4th level Saint Monarch could do. From the cultivation alone, the youngster in white robes could not possibly be that mysterious, peerless expert. But this black-robed man, on the other hand, had a cold and evil aura that could not be probed. Even with his cultivation, he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation at all. Without a question, this person was a dangerous character. And an absolute, peak-level expert. In that case, the answer was very obvious. If the person who caused them to suffer such great losses wasn't him, then, who else? So although he asked the question, his eyes were already locked venomously on the 9 Nether 14th young master. This person is undoubtedly a powerful enemy. The lives of 100,000 of my soldiers were all buried by this evil-looking guy in black. Just from that cold and dark energy emanating from him, it's obvious that this guy isn't a good person. Such demonic techniques could only come from him. That innocent-looking youth with a pretty boy face at the back would definitely not be capable of such evil and ruthless acts. There is no doubt that the evil-looking guy in black is the main sinner of our divine son. Chuangshan Beidao and the other 6 Saint Monarchs instantly grew crazy as soon as they saw the 9 Nether's 14th young master. They stared hatefully at the 9 Nether 14th young master, unable to hold themselves back from wanting to pounce on him immediately and strip his flesh from his bones. Motherfuckers! The 9 Nether 14th young master roared angrily, feeling extremely wronged. How would he not know that he had become the scapegoat for that girly-looking young Master Jun? But with enemies knocking right on his door, there wasn't any meaning in trying to reason things out given the vast amount of hate. Looking fiercely at Chuangshan Beidao, he snorted. Why aren't you kneeling and begging for death when you see this young master? Or are you still thinking of stubbornly resisting? The dark and icy voice seemed to have bloomed out of a refrigerator, chilling the hearts of any who heard him. You cold-hearted and ruthless son of a beach! Murderous bastard! Chuangshan Beidao nearly had a stroke when he heard the 9 Nether 14th young master's words. His eyes turned red and he pointed angrily. Feck your grandfather. Feck your ancestors. Ah 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 ah. Wrapped in the black mist, the 9 Nether 14th young master's face instantly turned incredibly ugly. The atmosphere was already not good, and Chuanshang Beidao's words were like pouring oil on fire, directly turning the hot day into a winter cold. The chill in the air was naturally caused by the 9 Nether 14th young master. The black fog around his body surged out, causing the temperature in the entire area to plummet. The 9 Nether 14th young master was truly angered to the point of exploding this time. This outsider's bastard is truly quite something. Without even clarifying who caused his losses, he directly looked for me for trouble. Even though the two sides are enemies. And it shouldn't matter even if he was misunderstood. But it clearly wasn't done by me. And you actually pointed your finger in my face and scolded my ancestors? Did my ancestors offend you? What the feck was that? Behind the 9 Nether 14th young master, Jun Moxie sighed lightly and said with a solemn voice. Although both sides are irreconcilable enemies, and it is an honor to die on the battlefield, but such a large-scale slaughter is indeed somewhat evil. An innocent and pure look hung on young Master Jun's face as he lamented sadly at the state of the world. Even a single ant is a piece of life. These outsiders. Although they're a little more disgusting. But cows are born by mother cows. And humans are also born from their mothers. Even though they're not considered as cows or humans, they have mothers as well. This is an indisputable truth. Long live logic. When Chuanshang Beidao heard those words from young Master Jun, he could not help feel much better in his heart. He nearly dropped a tear from being too touched. That is what a human's words are supposed to sound like. Look at how that pretty boy talks. How graceful and well articulated. Unlike that black-robed, murderous bastard. Wait, what's with them not considered as cows or humans? The 9 Nether 14th young master turned and looked incredulously at Jun Moxie. Who would have thought that this huge hat of sins would just be placed on his own head like that? What nonsense is that fellow spouting? The moment Jun Moxie's words came out, the 9 Nether 14th young master's crime had already been determined. If even your own people testified against you, was there any point in denying? Even if young Master Jun stood out now and changed his words, declaring that it was him who did everything, Chuanshang Beidao would not believe it. Not only would he not believe, he would even ridicule Jun Moxie for being boastful. What a load of crap. Just a newly advanced 4th-level Saint Monarch like you could create such a mess. Do you think that your face is pasted with gold? Even boasting was not done in such a way. As for what Jun Moxie wanted to do, the idea was extremely simple. In any case, this 9 Nether 14th young master was too free. So, he might as well give this elderly fellow some stuff to do. These few Saint Monarchs in front of them right now happen to be excellent targets. If the 9 Nether 14th young master raised his hands and took care of all of them, the battle would become much easier. Even if he couldn't take care of all of them, killing a few was still a good thing. The 9 Nether 14th young master would deal with the high-level experts on the other side, while he would focus on the main battle on the ground. In any case, no one would listen to that icy fellow if he tried to command the army. Letting him deal with these Saint Monarchs was much more useful. It was better than letting him continue being useless. You, expert of the Xian continent, do you dare to fight with the experts of our race? Chuanshang Beidao snorted, causing Jun Moxie and the 9 Nether 14th young master to be somewhat stunned. These fellows had charged menacingly all the way here. But not only did they not attack directly, they instead decided to issue a challenge. Aren't all of their experts right here? Could it be that they had even more formidable experts still? Is that possible? On the side of the three holy lands, Gu Han was the strongest expert. When Gu Han was at his peak strength, he should be one of the stronger 4th-level Saint Monarchs. At most, he would be around the strength level of half-sage, not necessarily comparable to the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. After seeing the 9 Nether 14th Young Master, Chuangshang Beidao still dared to issue a formal challenge. That means that the outsiders still had more powerful experts who weren't necessarily weaker than the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Then, comparing between the two sides, the Xian continent's experts were definitely inferior. Jun Moxie's thoughts spun quickly as he made his conclusion. Although these bunch of people are all Saint Monarch experts, even if all 7 of them joined hands, they are still not a match for us. But since they've charged up here, they must have something to rely on. Jun Moxie transmitted his voice quickly. I think they must have some other helper. And this helper is much stronger than all of them. If that is true, I'm really not confident of being able to handle that helper. Besides, my techniques are more suitable for use in chaotic battles, and less suited for individual combat. I'll have to trouble Brother 14th. In any case, there's nothing much for you to do here, so you might as well go and have a nice fight with their expert. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master was so angered by this shameless remark that he nearly fainted. What kind of words were those? Ah! Even if one wanted to shift trouble to another person, it wasn't done in such a blatant way. What, not suited for individual combat? Feck. If you're not suited for it, is there anything in the world that you're suited in? Expert of the Xian continent, do you have the guts to come with us? Come and fight with the same level expert of our race. Chuangshang Beidao gritted his teeth and stared provocatively at 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Do you dare? This, do you dare, was as good as a formal challenge. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master rolled his eyes and snorted icily. You're expert? What kind of dog-shut thing is that? Isn't it still the same disgusting creatures? That kind of thrash dares to pick a fight with this young master? Why wouldn't this young master dare? There is no place in this world that this young master wouldn't dare to go. Lead the way. What kind of character was the 9 Nether 14th Young Master? He was the publicly acknowledged #1 expert of this world. He had never shrunk away from a challenge before. In addition, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master was also a reasonable person. Although he felt that he'd been set up by Jun Moxie, he still agreed with the latter's words. He was undoubtedly not as useful as Jun Moxie over here. So in that case, he might as well go and get rid of the old rats in the outsider's nest. Besides, the expert that even a peak Saint Monarch like Chuangshang Beidao acknowledged would definitely not be weak. To have a match against experts of that level was a rare opportunity. He was already on the verge of a breakthrough, and any additional bit of comprehension gained through such a battle would be beneficial. Thinking of this, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master even began to feel somewhat excited. What means did one depend on to break through? It was by engaging in battle with experts even stronger than oneself. Gaining comprehension through battle and advancing further. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master had not met a truly strong expert in a long time. Such a good thing was not something that one could meet easily, especially with his current strength. Jun Moxie sniggered lightly and transmitted his voice. A battle against a strong expert. Ah! How enviable. So, do you feel grateful to me? You owe me another favor now. Remember that. Remember. Why wouldn't I remember? When this young master comes back, I'll be sure to settle the score properly with you. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master snorted and transmitted back. After that, He looked at Chuangshan Beidao and asked coldly. Why aren't you trash leading the way yet? What are you waiting for? Chuangshan Beidao saw that the 9 Nether 14th young master had agreed, and he nodded satisfactorily. Since you're not afraid of death, that is good. Come with me. Chuangshan Beidao seemed to be hiding some hints of joy. When they charged up here earlier, they'd intended to depend on the combined strength of the 7 of them to take out this peerless expert. But the moment they reached here, they discovered to their surprise that there was one more person. It was actually 2 people. This story will be continued to chapter 1241. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.